everybody, it's Sarah, and today I have part 1 of my January wrap-up for you. And I know it's a bit early in the month to have a January wrap-up, but I have once again already read a bunch of books. So I feel like I kind of should do a wrap-up already, because by the end of the month I probably will have too many books to either talk about all the books, or on the other hand, the wrap-up will just be way too long. And since I don't want that, and since I do want to talk about all the books, I decided to split it into 2 again. And that's probably how I will do it during the whole year. Like, I think I want to start doing 2-part wrap-ups, and no matter how many books I have read by the middle of the month, I want to wrap them up. So anyway, the way I'm going to do this is, first I want to share with you all the books that I'm currently reading, so maybe that's a little bit of a sneak peek for my final wrap-up of the month. And then I want to try a new thing with my wrap-ups. I used to always do my wrap-ups chronologically and talk about the books in order that I read them, but the way I want to do them in the new year is, first I want to talk about all my rereads, and then I want to go in like star rating order, and first start with the book that I like the least and then go on to the book that I like the best that month. So let me first start with all the books that I'm currently reading. First, I have Faust Part 2 by Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. Goethe is kind of Germany's Shakespeare and Faust is kind of his Hamlet, so it's his like well-known tragedy, although it's definitely not a tragedy on the level of like Shakespeare's tragedies. So yeah, this is a bind-up of Part 1 and Part 2, and I am about halfway through it. I don't know, it's a play, so I'm reading it really slowly because I'm confused most of the time. But I'm seeing Faust in theater on the 27th, and I want to have this done until then. Next, I have A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara, and I'm currently buddy reading this, and I'm about a third of the way through this book, about 280 pages of 720. Then I have, I think the English name of this is Lady of Darkness by Diana L. Paxson, which is the second book in the Westria series, which the first book I read like ages ago and I have no clue what's going on. I'm also about a third of the way into this, about 100 pages. And like, even if you don't really know what's going on, it's a basic enough story that I can still follow it. And this was one of the pulls that I had from my normal TBR jar. Then I started, and I probably won't have this in a wrap-up until the end of the month, but Le Mort d'Arthur by Sir Thomas Malory. I'm like 20 pages in. It's on the one hand quite easy to read, but on the other hand I also don't want to read too much at once, so I think this is going to be quite slow, and we'll see if I can finish it by the end of the year, although it should be possible. Then I have Lady Hotspur by Tessa Gretton, which you can't see because I took the jacket off. I'm about 80 pages into this. I don't know if you can see it. Doesn't look like a lot, but I'm really enjoying this so far, and I'm definitely excited to continue on. And then the last book I'm currently reading is Affliction by Laurel K. Hamilton, which is the 22nd book in the Anita Blake series, which I pulled from my series TBR chart during my January TBR video. And yeah, so I'm continuing on with that series. Next, on to my rereads. The first reread I had this month was Dreams Made Flesh by Anne Bishop, which is the 4th book in the Black Jewel series. And this is a collection of 4 short stories. One of those kind of tells you more about the history of the world and about the history of the blood, how they came to be. The second short story takes place between the 2nd and the 3rd book in the Black Jewel series, so between Heir of Shadow and Queen of Darkness, and it tells you how Lucifer met his wife Marianne. The 3rd short story tells you a little bit more about the history of the High Lord, and it's absolutely heartbreaking. And the 4th short story takes place after what happens in Queen of Darkness and kind of deals with the emotional repercussions of everything all the characters had to do to win the fight. And yeah, this is definitely one of my favorite of the Black Jewel series, especially Prince of Avonry, which is the 2nd short story, and I'm of course doing a reread for this to prepare for finally the 10th book in the series, Queen's Pardon. Then, as you already saw, I started with book 22, Affliction in the Anita Blake series, but before I did that I had to reread 2 of the books before that, the 20th and the 21st book, Hit List and Kiss the Dead. And the Anita Blake series, for those of you who don't know, is a very basic paranormal fantasy series, urban fantasy series. And we follow Anita Blake, who is a vampire executioner, a vampire hunter, and also an animator, so she can raise zombies. And the first 10 books of the series were her mostly just solving preternatural crimes and also just meeting different monsters. and the latest 10 books have been her just collecting boyfriends. And I was pleasantly surprised by Hit List. I hadn't had a rating for both of those on Goodreads because I read both of them before I got Goodreads, but I was pleasantly surprised by Hit List. It reminded me a lot of the earlier books in Anita Blake series, so I did give this 4 stars, even though like the Anita Blake series as a whole is not a 4-star series. It's maybe a 3-star series. Like, it has a lot of problems. There's like kind of a lot of misogyny and girl hate, and Anita just like never gets along with any girls. She's basically the only female character in the entire series by now, unless like there's some female police detective or someone she meets, but like of the central cast she's the only female character. So it's definitely not a 4-star series, but this book within the series is a 4-star book, if you kind of get what I mean. Anyway, pleasantly surprised by Hit List, kind of a little bit bored by Kiss the Dead, because Hit List wasn't set in St. Louis where the books are usually set. She was like outside somewhere, and Kiss the Dead was set in St. Louis again. And yeah, we didn't spend more time on sex than on plot like the books before that, so it wasn't quite that bad. It was still like kind of 3 stars. However, we did spend more time reintroducing all of her boyfriends and lovers and all the men that she ever had sex with, rather than spending time on plot, so that was kind of boring. But yeah, still enjoyed both of the rereads. And then the last reread that I had so far this month was Tangled Webs by Anne Bishop, also which is book 6 in the Black Jewel series, and I could just jump straight into book 6 because I do not have book 5 in English, and I ordered it in English because I thought, well, I'm doing a reread now, I'm gonna buy the 2 books that I don't own in English and finally read them in English. And The Invisible Ring, book 5, you can kind of read anywhere between book 3 and book 7. So I reread book 6 before book 5 because The Invisible Ring still hasn't arrived. And this is, I think, my second favorite book in the series. I don't know if I like this more or Heir of the Shadows, Heir to the Shadows, one or the other. But anyway, this is a spooky house setting, so basically 2 of my favorite characters are caught in a spooky house, and it's very tropey and it's very funny, and at the same time it's also really, really scary, but I enjoy it a lot. So yeah, I would definitely recommend you to at least get to book 6 if you ever start the series. So now on to the books that I read for the first time this month. The first one is Alpha and Omega, which is kind of the introductory novella to the Alpha and Omega series by Patricia Briggs. And I hadn't intended to read this, but if you saw my January TBR, you saw that I pulled Cry Wolf out of my TBR jar, and I decided to read that, and I started reading that, and I was so confused because there is this introductory novella beforehand, even though officially Cry Wolf is the first book in the series. And so I thought, okay, I'd read this novella. It's like, it's fine. It's an 80-page novella. There isn't that much story. I think I also didn't get a lot of it because one of the characters that appears in the Alpha and Omega series, and so is also introduced in this novella, is one of the side characters from the Mercy Thompson series, which is Patricia Briggs' other series in the same world. And yeah, I just gave it 3 stars. I enjoyed it well enough, I read it fast enough, and it was just like, eh. And then of course I read Cry Wolf by Patricia Briggs, which is the first official novel in the Alpha and Omega series. And this series is another paranormal fantasy series, and we follow Anna, who kind of lived the past 3 years in this werewolf pack where she was just like abused, both sexually as well as physically as well as emotionally. And then this other wolf kind of comes in and sweeps her away, and that's what the novella is about, that's what Alpha and Omega is about. And then in this book we kind of see her moving in with the wolf that swept her away, who is her fated mate, like her official mate, or the wolves are mated or whatever, which was my main issue with the book, or like one of my main issues with the book, because I do not really like the whole mates thing. At least not if it's like this and suddenly you can't keep away from each other, because I just prefer a slow development of a relationship over just a whole fate thing. But yeah, I gave this 3 stars as well because again it was enjoyable enough. But my other main issue was that I couldn't read this before reading the novella, because I don't know, maybe that's just me, but I think novellas, you can have it in books that maybe there's a few parts where you might be a bit confused because there's hinting to stuff that happened in a novella, but I don't think if you write novellas to books that they should be important enough to the story that you cannot continue on with the series without reading those novellas. So yeah, that was also a big issue of mine, especially since it's the first book. So yeah, it's okay, but I'm not sure yet if I'll continue in the series. I don't want to officially DNF it, but I think it's just gonna be one of those series where it's just at the very bottom of my want to read next pile. And then the last book I read so far was The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller, and oh my god, my heart was broken. I just, so hard to read this. For those of you who do not know yet, The Song of Achilles is a retelling of Patroclus and Achilles' love story from the Iliad. And yeah, so I don't know if that's spoilers or not, but I don't consider it spoilers, because if you don't know how the Iliad ends, it's been like thousands of years, like get to it. But anyway, because I knew how this story would end, it was really hard for me to continue reading, and every time I was like, I want to continue reading, but I also don't want to because I do not want the pain, and like I cannot deal with it. It's already so painful, and honestly, if I hadn't read this as a buddy read, I probably would have set it down with the intention to finish it once I'm ready, once I feel emotionally ready, and then would never have picked it up again. But yeah, this was also one of my 5-star predictions of 2020, and this was a 5-star book. I absolutely loved it. I liked it more than Circe, I think, and I probably will have a review of this up soon. We'll see. But anyway, that was it for all the books that I read so far in January of 2020. I would say my reading year started out quite well. Tell me in the comments down below how your reading year started, which book you started your reading year, if you have any thoughts on the books that I read this month. If you enjoyed this video, maybe think about giving me a thumbs up and also maybe subscribing. All the links to my social media are in the description box down below, so go and check those out, and I hope I'll see you soon. Bye!